All right, section 5 is all about angle relationships. And once again, there are a lot of vocabulary terms in here, so get your pencil ready and take some notes. All right, the first vocabulary word is vertical angles. And vertical angles are defined as two angles whose sides are opposite rays. So if we take a look at this, if we take a look at angle 1 and 3, you can see that those two angles here have opposite rays. And angle 4 and 1, those have opposite rays. And so you can see that the red and the blue form 4 angles. And the pairs that are across from one another are called vertical angles. 2 are vertical angles, and 3 and 4 are vertical angles. And vertical angles are always going to be congruent. So the measurement of angle 1 is going to equal the measurement of angle 2, and the measurement of angle 3 is going to equal the measurement of angle 4. So another vocabulary word is adjacent angles. And adjacent angles are defined as two coplanar angles with a common side, a common vertex, and no common interior points. Well, that's a lot of words, but let's take a look at what's going on. All right, a common side. So you see in both pairs, angle 1 and 2 share the red ray, and 3 and 4, they both share the red ray. They have a common vertex, so angle 1 and 2 share this vertex, and angle 3 and 4 share this vertex. And they have no common interior points. So if I put a point here, well, that's in angle 1, but it's not in angle 2. Or if I put a point over here, it's in angle 4, but not in angle 3. But I really prefer to think of adjacent angles as simply as angles that are next to one another. I think that's the easiest way to think about them. Another vocabulary word is complementary angles. And this is defined as two angles, the sum of whose measures is 90 degrees. So we can look at it a couple of different ways. If you look at the picture on the far left, angles 1 and 2 are complementary angles. You know this because you can see that it has this little square on the angle, which is the symbol for 90 degrees. So you know that angle 1 plus angle 2 has to equal 90 degrees. But the angles don't have to be adjacent. If you take a look at the picture on the right, angle A and angle B, even though they're not next to each other, when you add their measures, they still add up to 90 degrees, so they would still be considered complementary angles. Supplementary angles are angles whose sum measures 180 degrees. So just like the complementary angles, if you take a look at the picture on the far left, 3 and 4 are adjacent, but they are also supplementary. You know that because they form a straight angle, and a straight angle has to equal 180 degrees. But if you look at the picture on the right, they are not adjacent, but 75 and 105 equals 180, so they are still supplementary angles. So let's take a look how we can use this in an example. So the first thing you want to do when you have a picture is try and identify what angle pair is going on. So if you take a look at this, I have two lines that kind of form a cross. And if I think about that, I knew that the angles opposite each other are called vertical angles. And I know that vertical angles are congruent to each other, so I can write an equation that would say 5x has to equal 80. And now all I have to do is divide by 5, and I can solve for x, and I know that x is 16. If I plug 16 back into the 5x expression, it would equal 80, and it's proving that those two angles are congruent. All right, here's another example. Angle ABD is adjacent to angle BDC. Well, let's just take a look at that statement. That statement is just telling me that these two angles are next to one another and they share a common side, BD. If the measurement of ABC is 96 degrees, well, let's locate that angle. There's ABC, and it is 96 degrees. And they want to know what is the measurement of ABD. Well, ABD is this angle right here. I don't know its measure, so I'm just going to call it X. Well, I know that the big angle is 96 degrees, and part of that is 70. So if I just say 96 minus 70, I would find out what the value of x is, which would be 26 degrees. So I know that the measurement of angle ABD is 26 degrees. You can start to see why it's important to know your vocabulary and be able to identify it in a picture. So here's another one. What is the measurement of angle 1? Please note here that the number 1 does not have a degree symbol next to it. So it's not saying that that angle is 1 degrees. It's just labeling it as angle 1. So I see here this red little square here, which shows me that these angles, this big angle is 90 degrees. So I know that these two angles are complementary angles. If I remember my definition, complementary angles are two angles whose measures add to 90 degrees. So now I can write an equation. 42 plus the measurement of angle 1 equals 90 degrees. To solve this, I just have to subtract 42 from both sides, and I know that the measurement of angle 1 is 48 degrees. And one last example, determine the value of x. Well, if I take a look at these two adjacent angles, they form a straight angle together, so I know that they would be supplementary angles. If I think about my definition of supplementary angles, I know it's two angles whose measure adds to 180 degrees. Now I can write an equation. 2x plus 3 plus 6x plus 1 has to equal 180 degrees. I'm just going to combine my like terms, so I have 8x plus 4 is 180 degrees. Subtract 4 from both sides. 8x is 176. Grab my calculator and divide 176 by 8, and I know that x is 22. I can check my answer by substituting it back into each expression for x. So I know that 2x plus 3 would actually equal 47 degrees. And if I plug 22 in for x for 6x plus 1, I know that that would be 133 degrees. And if I add 47 and 133, I get 180, so that checks out. All right, complete worksheet 1.5, and if you have any questions, let us know.